Hello everyone, I'm here Tech Motorsports, and this time around we have a BMW 2010 135i convertible and coolant hose time. So that's what we're going to be working on this one. So to give you a little bit of background on the car, there were a couple hoses already replaced. One was replaced, and then that one gave out. Start that. Let me start over again. The first one was replaced when it went bad. So I got that going, and then probably, I don't know, let's say not even a week later, another one busted. So now they're down to two. So at one point, we just decided to replace all the coolant hoses. We're not going to include the heater hoses on this one. It's just mainly more just the tubing itself and the hoses for the radiator and the engine. So for the two new ones that we already purchased and already replaced, I did order those because I didn't know which ones were replaced, or we couldn't figure out which one over the phone. So we just went ahead and ordered all of those, and just the two new ones that were already replaced, we're going to send those back. So let's take a look at what hoses we're going to be replacing. So let's check that out. Okay, so here are all the hoses. I'm actually not going to go through every single one of them because they're in the wrapper still. Because remember, there are two of them that I'm going to replace. I think it's two, or return back. So we just got from any other hoses that are here going towards the back. Those are going to get replaced. We got the radiator ones, some coolant ones. This is the hard line that goes towards underneath the radiator. We got thermostat housing, the little plastic little thingy-bobber there. And on this one, we chose to get the one with the metal hose on it. You can see it a little bit better there, with a metal end on it. And then we have the coolant and a couple more hoses back in the back. This one is the little small one for the actual radiator itself. Oh, and the antifreeze back there towards the back. Too bad it's been the third time he's bought antifreeze for this thing, which, if you know, some of this antifreeze isn't cheap. So let me get to it. So let me break out my wrenches, and I'm probably going to go ahead and get this up on my quick jacks. And let's get started. So so on this bay right here, I have to get the car in the right spot. Because the way I set the quick jacks to give me room up front, or depending on the back, but I have to give myself plenty of room, so where the quick jack, when it scissors forwards or backwards, depending on how I lay the quick jacks, it comes close to the door. And the first time I couldn't get it up all the way and get the latches locked. So I had to lower it back down, move it forward just a tad bit, and then reposition the quick jacks, and then start over again. So now I got about 2 inches before the rear bumper hits the garage door, which is pretty much right where I want. And what I'm trying to do is just make plenty of room up front. That way, I have plenty of room to work on the engine. So that's what that was all about. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to end up doing is removing the pan from underneath of the engine, the car itself. As I was looking underneath, there's a nice decent oil leak. So now I have to give Mr. CH a call and address that with him and see exactly what's leaking. So I'm going to go ahead and take the belly pan down, and also locate the drain plug and drain the coolant while I'm at it. So I'll go ahead and just do that, and I'll be back in a sec. Okay, so the under tray is removed. There's I guess it's a two-piece under tray. You have the big section that's underneath the whole engine and transmission area, and then you have there's a little small one that's technically what covers the intercooler. So that will have to be removed as well. You'll have to there's a couple different methods to do it, but the method that I ended up doing it was I dropped the front mount intercooler, dropped that, and I was able to reach the drain on the radiator. And by looking at the radiator has been replaced recently. It looks brand new. I did find one of the hoses that goes from looks like the heater core, comes up to the front. That one is brand new, and I think it's this one right here, the one for the reservoir tank. That one looks new as well. So I think I found the two hoses plus the radiator that has been replaced. But once I start taking it apart, I'll be able to figure that part out. So yeah, so there's a couple methods to get all the coolant out. Now remember, I did state earlier that the hoses have broken twice on this person, so it has brand new coolant in it already. But I'm going to go ahead and drain whatever I can out of it, because I hate to be underneath the car, pop the hose off, and then I take a bath in antifreeze. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do old school method. You can do the turn the water pump on, and there's a cycle that you can end up doing, and you can end up getting to push all the coolant out. I don't want to take that step. I'm just going to do it old school, and by doing what I mean by old school is I'm going to grab me just a small little rag, and then my little air, and I already have my drain pan underneath. It's been kind of leaking just a tad bit already. There wasn't really much that came out. Like I stated, the hose popped, and it was brought to me. So let's see what we got. Remember, if you're doing this, if you do it this method, do not just completely open it. You technically, to be honest with you, I wouldn't do any more than 10 psi, so just barely put it in there, because you only need a little pressure. Now, you can, and I have done this before in the past, you can put your mouth in here and blow in it, and you can get the water out that way. It gives you a headache. I had to do that before in some other areas where there was no water, no nothing, just to get as much of the coolant out. So, nice little tip for you guys. I don't know if you could hear the water dripping out of the oil pan already. Sorry, I mean dripping into the coolant pan. You know now? Hearing that water drip? I gotta pee. Darn that water drip, it always gets me. Alright, I hear a bunch of water already, air coming out. Alright, I'm happy with that. So yeah, now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take a quick little break. I gotta go pee. Okay, so I'm back. Don't you just hate it? And it happens to me pretty much all the time. I guess it comes with age, huh? So yeah, so now what I'm gonna end up doing is I went ahead and already removed the little air section here. It's just 4 bolts right here. And what I'm going to end up doing is just going to remove the electric fan and a couple other items around, so I can take a look and take a glance at all the hoses. I did find the second one, so we did replace. This is brand new right here, which connects to the tank, and then the one that connects to the lower section of the upper radiator hose that goes back towards the back. That one was the new one. I did give a quick call out to CS on the oil leak that he's got back underneath. That's what BMW leaks oil? They never leak oil. Huh. We only wish they didn't. And if they didn't, I'd be out of business. Just kidding. So yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and just start removing some of this stuff, and yeah, let me get to it. These right here, they twist, and they're to unlock them, and then you just pull out. Okay, so whew, boy oh boy. I didn't think this job through. So a lot of hoses, very tight spots, very tight areas. So found the culprit, and it is the, of course, this is the coolant hose that goes from the thermostat housing area to the actual front of the motor, and it has the plastic section that goes into the motor. Of course, that's what gave out. It was cracked, so I found the 2 bolts, and when I went to just grab it to kind of see if it would nudge, it just fell out. So that was the culprit there. I'm still going to look around just in case there was anything, because he did have technically a couple keep going, so I just want to make sure. So there are a couple hoses that I did leave off that I didn't get on the cart. So one of the hoses that I did not get was one that was already replaced, which is the heater hose, and I didn't get the other heater hose, which that is the one that connects that goes underneath in front of the engine in between the intercooler. That hose section I did get, but I did not get that hose, so I got to get that hose. Also, there is a small little coupler with the hose attached to it on this side, which is to the transmission cooler. I think it's what that one is, the little small one. That one I did not get, so I got to get that one. I did get the little nipple here. I did get the hose that connects to that. And then there is a, it's kind of like a, in between a 90 and a 45 degree elbow that connects to an aluminum tubing that goes on the side of the block. That looks like it connects to the back side of, it's the back side of the water pump. That hose I did not get either. So I'm going to go ahead and get that hose. So yeah, so there's a couple items that I need to order that I didn't take in consideration, or actually when I was sitting there looking, I just didn't put them in the cart. So I'll go ahead and get that going. So unfortunately, this puts me in a bind because I have other stuff going on, and I'm going to be gone for about 5 days, and I will be at Sebring with my customer for a race weekend. So and with this being pushed back even further, is going to push all the other stuff back because I need one bay clear to bring it into the car in. So yeah, I'll get those parts ordered, and I'll pick it up when those parts come in. Okay, everyone, I'm back on the 135i. The parts have been ordered, and yeah, on the parts, it's taking a little longer to get the parts. I'm gonna vent. So I go on the websites, they show in stock, or 1 or 2 days lead time. Perfectly fine. Well, you know, when you go in there and you read, and they say that, hey, they'll contact you if there's any issues or any delays or anything of that sort. Well, it seems to happen those calls or those emails have been, or have not come. So so needless to say is I order the parts. The part that I was supposed to be getting, or one of the parts that I was supposed to be getting, was supposed to, I think it was a 2 to 3 day lead time. I'm like, fine, I'm going to be gone. I'm going to be at Sebring. So I order the part. I should be plenty of time. By the time I get ready to work on it, the part should be here. Well, I didn't get no email, I didn't get no call, so what I end up doing is, like always, I look at my orders every day just to see if there's anything out of the ordinary. And when at that time, because it was going to be 2 or 3 days, business days, I didn't look at it as soon as possible. But when I did look at it, it showed there was no ETA. So that means my part was not coming in. Of course, they don't want to split the part up. So I had to locate another one, which kind of pushed me back a little bit. But still, the part is arriving hopefully today. That is just one of the little things that just drives me nuts about, you know, when you're trying to buy parts. It's just they show they have it in stock, and as soon as you put it on your car, you order it. You wait a couple days later, and now it's not in stock. So it's like hook, line, and sinker. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. But anyways, and in between all of that stuff's going on, I had an N54 engine dropped off, and an N54 engine that's going to be going into an E90 smoking. So we're just going to drop another engine in with low miles. So where I left off is I was trying to take this pipe off, and when I got the motor and I put it on the engine stand, I started looking at the pipe, and I'm like, oh, there's a little bit more into it, but just removing a couple bolts. So what I ended up doing is I just removed the water pump. There's 3 bolts to the water pump. Bammo whammo, disconnect the electrical connector, and the water pump's out. And then it able to get me to remove this hose, because this is one of the hoses that I ended up ordering that I didn't order originally. So I got the kit to replace that. But let's take a look at that hose that I was talking about, that I was trying to take off, which is the coolant hose that goes to the water pump and onto the side of the block. So let's take a look at that real quick. Alright, so here's the N54 engine that I have on my engine stand that I just got. And there is the pipe that I was talking about. That section back there connects to the water pump. And there is the section right there that connects between the turbos to the side of the block. And also there are the coolant lines that need to be removed there as well. So I started looking at it, I'm like, man, that's a pain in the butt to be able to take that thing off. So With the engine in, of course, there's a cross member there, so it is a lot harder to get to it from underneath. Actually, almost impossible to get it from underneath. So I was going from the top of the engine. But that is the hose that I was trying to take off, and just decided which was much more easier, to remove the water pump. So that's where I'm at now. Okay, so now I got my water pump right here. I'll go ahead and took this bad boy off. This one, my understanding was recently replaced as well, so we're just going to keep that one in there. And so what I'm going to end up doing is trying to get this back in together, and hopefully get this thing wrapped up. And one little thing that I like to end up using to help these hoses go in place is add some WD-40. I usually try to put it on the item itself or in the hose itself. It just makes it so much easier, especially, let me grab this real quick, especially when you're dealing with a little booger like this. This is the stock clamp that I already got on there, or the replacement clamp, and this is the OEM clamp that goes on there. This one's a very pain in the butt. You pretty much almost need a special tool, or the BMW tool, to remove this. But if you got some trusty needle nose pliers like this one's right here, you can go into between both jaws, tighten them together, and just slide it forward, and then remove the hose itself. You could probably use like a 90-degree pick to go in there and kind of break it loose from around the pipe and just slide it out. But because this is spring and is not a hose clamp, and trying to get it positioned correctly, I'm going to end up lubing the hoses up and put it on a pipe and on the water pump, bolting it in. That way I could maneuver it in place and get it to the right spot, and then release the beast on the hose clamp that goes onto the aluminum tubing. So that's what I'm going to end up doing now. And so yeah. Okay, now that I got the water pump back in and I got that hose in place for that aluminum tube that bolts onto the side of the block between the turbos. So a little bit of a tidbit. I was messing with it, trying to get it in place and tried different ways, and what was able to work for me and to get it in nicely and somewhat easy if I just pulled everything in and took everything back out. So the way I end up doing is, on the actual water pump itself, you have two bolts down towards the bottom, and you have one that's closest to the actual plastic housing. And what you want to do is you want to install that bolt in, but before you do that, you want to lube, and you can use WD-40 or penetrating oil, any of that sort, the actual hose onto the aluminum tube, and have that already in place, and kind of look to see how it goes, so that way you could kind of place the hose in almost in the right place. Once you get the water pump in place, put that bolt down there towards the bottom, again the one closest to the plastic housing. What you want to do is you want to tighten it, and you want to have it loose enough to where it moves a little bit. But the whole thing is you're able to rotate it up and I guess forward and back. What that's going to enable you to do is to be able to rotate it back and actually slide the hose in place, and then rotate it forward. And then as you're doing that, you should be able to slide the hose in place and pretty much almost get it right where you need to be. And by the WD-40, this is where you want to add, you make sure you have enough in there to where once you get that in there, you're able to grab the hose and rotate it, so that way it doesn't bind up, and it has the actual direction of the flow from where the tube goes into the back of the water pump. So that's a nice little tidbit of information there. Tried it different ways. That's what worked best for me. And just tighten the hose clamp, and the pressured one, that was a little bit of a pain, just to try to get it in there, clamp it down, and slide it over the existing hose. But that's all said and done. So next thing to do now is going to be installing the thermostat housing. So I got my new hose with the new heat shield and the thermostat itself. So I got this one's kind of snug into place, and looks like I left my clamp back at the table. So I'm gonna, oh no, here it is. So well, I left my wrench back at the table, so I gotta grab that. So no matter what, I'm gonna go ahead and get this in place. So what I'm trying to do is work my way backwards from the removal process, but you want to try to be able to get everything that's in the way installed, because you want to get this installed before you start bolting on the actual air charger tube. So yeah, so I'm gonna get to that. All right, so the next hose is going to be the one that connects to the front of the engine, and this one replaces the plastic housing with the aluminum one. So yeah, and it's always good to lube this little O-ring up before you install it. So this one, I'm thinking this one goes first before I do this one here, which is the section that goes on the subframe. So I'm gonna go ahead and try that now. To clean the surface with the O-ring and the gunk on the actual engine itself on the front, show you a little trick that I picked up long time ago. And so what I got is, this is a it's one of the wire wheels, and it's one of the bigger ones, and pretty much all the bristles are all gone. So I just zip tied a red scuff pad on the end of it, and you don't have to go super fast or anything, and just get it in here all nice. Beautiful. Works like a champ. Now I'm going to end up doing is checking the top section, make sure I got the top section pretty good. Yeah, looks pretty good all the way around. So sweet. There you go. Trick of the trade. So now I'm just going to dab a little lube on this one, get this one installed, and this should go right back on there. And this bolts onto the or clamps onto the back of the water pump. So yeah, I'll get to that. Okay, so now it's time to do this one here, which is still in the thermostat water pump area. And this one right here has the little slit in it. So that one just goes in one little spot, and you can't really mess up how it goes. So yeah, gonna get that going. Okay, so now I feel more confident and installing the pipe for the charger cooler. So when I took this pipe off, I realized that somebody was bending here and prying and physically actually bent this. So you can see how they stuck the screwdriver in between the hose and the actual tube itself, and they tried to pry the hose off. Yeah, so it bent it up pretty bad right here. So I was able to straighten it out a little bit. I have a I got a small piece of 1 3/4 tubing that I put in a vise and just kind of put it in there and just tapped around it just to get it to come out a little bit more rounded than it was. It was pretty bad. So yeah, I guess that's a method to do that. But when the metal is thin, it's kind of like plastic. It'll just break it, bend it. So yeah. So I already installed the new O-rings on this thing. So it's time to install it, and this will technically go from the bottom inward towards that way. So I will get that ball rolling. Okay, so I got the aluminum tubing in place. I got my 2 clamps in. That one in the back was easy. The one up front was a pain in the butt. But I got it in. Then I went ahead and mounted the plastic tubing section that goes on the front lower chassis rail. So I got that bolted in place, and yeah. So real quick, remember how I said I was going to be receiving some parts today? Well, I did. I only got half my order. Just to summarize, there was 2 on my order. One of the order, or the part that was in order, was already in stock, so they were waiting for the other package to come in. That's when I found out there was no ETA, so we swapped it out, and somehow they ended up shipping the part from 2 different locations. So I got one today, and then the other one is supposed to be coming tomorrow. So I'm just going to get as far as I can on this one. Also, I did mention earlier on that I wasn't going to replace the heater hose, but because I end up having to order two more hoses, I went ahead and ordered the heater hose. So now, which one heater hose is already replaced, so I went ahead and just ordered the other one. So technically all new hoses. So So yeah, so that's where I got going on. So I'm going to keep plugging away as far as I can now, and one day I'll be done with this car. One day. This car has already been here for 14 days. 14 days waiting on parts. So finally the part has come in. So now I could hopefully finish this car up. So I already installed it. I've already installed the surge tank itself as well. I had a little bit of an issue with the tank. I guess previously the actual sliding section of the surge tank was a little bit chewed up, so I had to file that down because my metal clip would not stay locked in. I would push it down and it would kind of pop it back up. So once I got that cleaned up, the pin was able to stay down. But to get the hose to stay in place, or actually to try to attach it, because of the room that you have, you technically have to attach it down there at the bottom, or that's how I did it. I had to remove the bracket and the vacuum canisters here to be able to get to that lower section of the hose. So that was done. Got the upper hoses installed as well. So a few more items to install so we could get this thing rolling and out of here. Is I have the fan and the shroud to install, the intercooler underneath to install as well, and then the section here, and then I have 2 more remaining hoses that need to be installed, which that would be done like right at the last minute. So yeah, after that it's going to be going through the bleeding procedure, and then yeah, so stay tuned for that. All right, so everything's all back together. I went ahead and took a few minutes just to make sure everything was tight, make sure I put a hand, a tool, something on it just to make sure. When I already filled the coolant, so I got that going, and as I was filling, I kept monitoring down underneath just to make sure there was nothing that was left loose or anything of that sort, but everything looks good. It's dry underneath. So what I ended up doing is just, I had the cap off, and there's a bleeder screw here on the surge tank. I took the bleeder screw out, filled it up with the coolant and distilled water. I know it's full now, but with the way the car was brought to me, I know it's going to take a lot more coolant than what I actually put in there. So once the cycling is done, I'm going to have to add more coolant, which is fine. I'll add more, and if I feel like I need to go ahead and run the system one more time, I will. Yeah, now that I got the coolant in, by taking the bleeder out, as you add the coolant, air will start to come out, so you can hear it kind of gurgle and move around in through the actual hoses itself. So yeah, so now that I've got that tightened up, I just put the cap back on it so it doesn't make a mess, and I got my battery charger on the car, and at this point it's just a matter of going inside the car and going through the process of turning that electric water pump on and trying to bleed the system. So let's go to the interior side. All right, let's see if we can get this done here. Now that I got the right key, or the correct key, all right, turning all the heat all the way up, turn the fan down, and let's see here, take off AC, and we'll have it there. So once that is done, you got the ignition on, you turn all the heat all the way up, and what you end up doing is on the accelerator pedal, you hold it all the way down about 10 to 15 seconds, and you should be able to hear the water pump turn on. So here we go. That's it. It's been about that time, so let's take a look underneath the hood real quick. All right, there we go. The water pump has started. As you can see, it's pretty much, the water pump is just bleeding the whole system out. So what I'm going to end up doing, I'm going to let it do its thing. I'm going to put the cap back on, and it's going to do that for about let's say about 15 minutes. And that's the reason why you have to put the or it's a good idea to put the battery charger on. Sometimes you don't know the condition of the battery, so it's good to have it on, that way you don't kill the battery. And yeah, so I guess we'll pick up once it's all purged out and there's no more air in the system. Okay, so I just want to touch base. So when I did the heater, I didn't explain myself on that one. So what you end up doing is when you turn the heat on, it opens the heat valves in the system, which that does then it makes the actual coolant system and the radiator and the engine and also the heater core as one big unit. And so what that does is when the water pump starts cycling through, it cycles through the whole entire complete coolant system. So that's the reasoning behind that. I apologize, I didn't go into details on that. So that's why when you do the bleeding system, you want to turn that sucker all the way to hot, because that way it's just one big system. So yeah, as you could probably hear, you could maybe hear the water pump still going, and it's going to do that. It's going to cycle off and on until she's done in about 15 minutes or so. So pick it up then. All right, so the bleeding is done. I actually did it twice, and this is the reason why I did it twice, because of the coolant hose that broke, and it broke, and then they were cycling it off and on, and kind of drove it on and off the trailer. I felt more confident of just making sure that I get all the air out of the system, so I did it twice. So the first time I did it, I kind of left the cap on it, walked away. And I was hearing it cycle off and on while I moved all my tools out of the way and cleaned up a tad bit. And then I did it one more time, but this time I stayed over it and watched the whole system and also listened to it. And by me, when I watched it, I removed the cap off the tank. And yeah, so I feel a little bit more comfortable that it's completely bled now. And yeah, so the only thing that is left is install the tray underneath and take it for a nice little test drive. So yeah. Like always, guys, I appreciate you watching and help the channel out. And by doing so, you got to hit the like button and subscribe. And hope to see you in the next video.